Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. So thank you all for being here tonight and joining us for Kwentuhan with Cambio and Co. featuring Erianne Salazar, who is a Manila-based makeup artist and model. And we are super excited to be here with you all tonight talking about body positivity, colorism, and redefining Filipino beauty, which are topics that are super relevant today. So thank you so much for being here and sharing space with us tonight. And in case you have not heard of Cambio & Co., just a little bit about us. So we are your hosts for this evening, and Cambio & Co. is an ethical fashion company that works with artisans in the Philippines. So all of our fashion accessories are designed and handcrafted in the Philippines, and our main mission is to create sustainable livelihood for Filipino artisans. And at the same time, our mission is also to provide opportunities for Filipinos in the diaspora, such as myself and such as many of you, to be able to reconnect with our heritage in tangible ways and to learn about the places that we come from and the people we come from and to celebrate all of that. So one of our rallying cries is really to wear your heritage. And that is our hashtag as well. And wear heritage means not only wearing pieces that are designed and handcrafted in the Philippines, but wearing pieces that also share the stories of where we come from and shares the stories of the people who make our pieces, and really celebrating all of those things and wearing them with pride. So that's really what Wear Your Heritage is all about and what our main advocacy is. Our Instagram is Cambio_Co, and our hashtag, of course, is Wear Your Heritage. And so we'd love to invite you all tonight, if you're active on socials, to please tag us and post about tonight and share some of your learnings, because we would love to reshare you on our channels and to also just like be able to, to repost some of the learnings that you have from this evening. So we'd love that. And just a little bit about us and who we are. And who we are as individuals in your team. So Cambio & Co., we're a small team, and there's really just the three of us. So I am one of your hosts for tonight. My name is Gelaine Santiago, and I am the co-founder of Cambio & Co. I was born in Bulacan and moved to Canada when I was very, very young. And I wasn't really connected with my Filipino heritage for most of my life. And it's really been only in the last few years that I've had the privilege to really unpack that part of myself and my Filipino identity, which has been a really enriching experience, but also definitely a challenging one. And especially when it comes to the topic of unpacking Filipino beauty and the standards of beauty that we're faced with and trying to understand all of those things. That's been a journey for sure. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you all tonight, because it's something that has definitely been something that I've been trying to learn a bit more and understand. And then I'd also love to introduce you to your other host for this evening, who is Nikki. So Nikki, maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for introducing me, Gelaine. So I'm Nikki Bautista. I'm the community storyteller for Cambio & Co. I was born in the Philippines, and I'm currently living in the Philippines. But when I was younger, for a few years, I also lived in Bangkok, Thailand. So during that time, I really kind of lost touch with my heritage and my culture. I didn't really speak Tagalog, or I kind of forgot it. And I didn't really know anything about our culture, because it's just not something that we talked about at home when I was living abroad. So when I moved back when I was much younger, I started learning about our culture and relearning, and just immersing myself again in the culture that we have. And it's only also been a continuous journey up to now of just unpacking a lot of things that I may have either taken for granted or has been left unquestioned until this time. So yeah. Including especially things like beauty. I really enjoy fun things like dressing up and putting on makeup and just feeling pretty and feeling good. But there's also been a lot that I've had to learn and unpack, like Gelaine mentioned, about the standards that we have and are impressed upon us when we're growing up that, like I mentioned, have remained unquestioned for myself. So yeah, I'm excited for our conversation tonight and just unpacking all of that and reaching a place where we can be positive in a healthy way. Yeah, so I'm excited.
Yay, so exciting. And then of course, I would like to tell you a bit about our third team member, who is Jerome, who is behind the scenes for this evening. And so he is on the Zoom as Cambio & Co. So Jerome is Cambio & Co.'s co-founder, and he's also my life partner. So we're in this together. And if you have any issues at all with like the technical side, you can feel free to drop it in the chat and Jerome will help you, or you can message us on our socials or email, and Jerome is behind the scenes taking care of all that. So thank you all. And before we get into this evening and the conversation itself, first would love to really take a moment to also talk about solidarity and allyship, because today we are talking about self-love and what it means to reclaim our identities and to learn to love ourselves, who we are, and to learn to love our bodies again. But it's hard to speak about these things and reclaiming without also talking about allyship, and particularly allyship to communities who we are so indebted to. So we'd like to take a moment to really state our solidarity with Indigenous peoples in the Philippines, but also in the lands that we reside. And we'd like to acknowledge that the land we are gathering on today as guests is the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat peoples, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We acknowledge that long before European settlers arrived and stole this land, which is known colonially as Toronto, this territory was the subject of the One Dish, One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and allied nations. And today this land continues to be home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, also known colonially as North America. We recognize that we are settlers on this land and that we have a responsibility to unlearn our roles and to work towards dismantling white supremacy and colonialist forces that continue to oppress and brutalize Indigenous peoples to this very day. So this land acknowledgement is really small, but first step towards reconciliation and also honoring the Indigenous communities whose land we reside on as settlers. And of course, we also would like to state our solidarity for Black lives and the Black community. We join the fight for Black liberation and we stand in solidarity. And we also stand alongside our friends, our family, our kababayan and fellow Filipinos as they continue to fight against oppression in the Philippines as well. So thank you all for being here with us and standing in solidarity with us as well today.
So hello, everyone. We're glad that you could join us tonight. Welcome to Quintuhan with Cambio. Yeah, so if in case you haven't or you don't know so much about Kwentuhan yet, Kwentuhan with Cambio is a series of online gatherings that we've recently started to hold. Kwentuhan in Tagalog it means to tell stories and to have a conversation, and it's really more of like an informal get together. And as Cambio & Co, this was important for us to do because we always knew that we were more than a shop. And just recently we launched our new website and we expanded our blog with a greater focus on storytelling, community, and conversation. So this Kwentuhan series is really to celebrate the spirit of what we want to embody, which is, as Gelaine mentioned earlier, just creating a space for Filipinos in the homeland and the diaspora to really reconnect with their heritage and our culture, and to converse and unpack our complicated history in order to understand our present and find our direction for the future. So tonight we're really talking about self-love, but we also have a few sessions coming up before I introduce this one, tonight's session. So next week and the week after that, we have sessions with there you go. Sessions with Victor Bagilat Jr. and Jovi Galit for identity and reconnection. Their registration is open, so you can learn more about them on our website for our online gatherings. And we've been holding these Kwentuhan in partnership with Kape Coffee. So Sorry. Yes, Jillian.
Sorry,
There you go.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not yet familiar, Kape is a Canadian social enterprise that promotes direct-to-farmer coffee from Philippine Indigenous women growers, and it's all roasted in small batches. So we're super excited to partner with them, and if you stay tuned, we got a little surprise courtesy of Kape, and hopefully you all have your drinks this evening, because Kwentuhan is always best over drinks. I've got tea. Nikki's got coffee. I think Erianne's got some tea as well.
Yeah.
And maybe some of you over there have some like tanduay or some beer, whatever floats your boat. It's all welcome.
Yeah. So yeah, more on the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. So self-love. When Gelaine and I, or the Cambio team and I, were talking about the topics we wanted to tackle within our community, one of the topics we really wanted to talk about was like self-love, and in the context of beauty and wellness. So we'll be talking about the Filipino experience in regards to like body positivity, colorism, the beauty standards that were impressed upon us. And this was really important to us because we realized in order to be fully proud to like wear our heritage, as Jimmy mentioned earlier, which is like our rallying cry as Cambio and Co., we also have to work towards being proud of the skin that we live in. And we all have beauty standards all over the world, but as Filipinos specifically, those of you joining us know that the expectations placed upon us are deeply rooted in colonial mentalities like light skin, thin bodies, hairless bodies, long straight hair, not to mention the expectations of like how to behave like Maria Clara, but that's a whole other discussion. So we really wanted to unpack what we find beautiful and consider valuable. And it's really timely right now because as Gelaine mentioned, in solidarity with Black Lives Matter at the moment and fight the blackness out there, we also have to fight it within our community and in ourselves. So we've also been having conversations on our platforms. If you've been following us closely on social media, we've been asking really uncomfortable questions within our community about anti-blackness and how to really fight it within our communities. And through our shared experience, we hope to see how we can redefine Filipino beauty, unlearn colorism, and embrace our bodies, ultimately self-love and empowerment. So we're really excited to hear from our speaker today, Erianne Salazar. She's, a little bit about Erianne. She's a Manila-based makeup artist and model. She's been in the industry since 2012, I believe, and she's done digital campaigns. She's done work in film, television, and commercials, and she's also recently delved into special effects makeup. She was recognized within the top 15 of the Nick's Face Awards in the Philippines. Erianne is also a model, so she's worked and modeled for Benefit Cosmetics Hello Happy Foundation and also for Beauty Bar, Beauty MNL, and she's done brand deals with Levi's, Nina, Cetaphil, Intuit, and The Face Shop. On top of all that, Erianne is also an empowerment advocate and influencer. She has a blog called Pretty Positive, and on her Instagram, she talks a lot about body positivity. She's also written for Preview magazine, and she's done a campaign with Max Factor Voices. And really the heart of this is her background in broadcast communication, which she graduated from. And her advocacy is really bringing attention to beauty and representation in Philippine media, as well as being an advocate for self-care and empowerment. So really excited to hear from her. Here she is, and she's going to be speaking more about self-love and her experiences with it. Erianne takes the floor. Hi, I think you're, yeah. Oh, Erianne, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi.
Perfect.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's the morning here, actually. So
Yeah.
good morning from over here. I'm so thrilled to be with you today to talk about positivity and self-love. There we go. All right, so today we're talking about self-love and body positivity, colorism, and redefining Filipina beauty. So we're going into this with the question of why do we need to define Filipina beauty? And it's more relevant than ever because we actually are now in a position to take back what it means to be Filipina, what it means to be, what Filipina beauty means. So um, in the past, we've been colonized for hundreds of years, and the opportunity to define ourselves was taken from us, and now we're in this position to actually take it back and redefine ourselves. And that's important because definitions are important, especially if we're defining ourselves, right? And I'd like to think that we're doing this for our daughters and our sons in the future, to help them um, grow into their identity more fully by knowing what it means to be a beautiful brown person, right? To be a beautiful Filipinos and Filipinas. So jumping right into that, I wanted to show you a few examples of anti-blackness in the Philippine media. Gelaine and Nikki have made me aware that most of you have not had the experience of living in the Philippines, and I just want to show you some examples of these anti-blackness themes in the media. So first off, we have Nita Negrita here. There's a racial slur in the title in itself, right? And that's already problematic. They also put her in blackface. So this is about a story of a girl who was bullied in school, and despite that, it's an inspirational story and all of these things. But it's hard to get past the glaring fact that she was done in blackface, and even her birth scene, the baby was put in blackface as well, like for shock value, and that's really horrible. And just because of this title, it's given like people everywhere a new thing to call dark-skinned girls in the Philippines, right? And then second here, where's that? Okay, here we go. We have Luna Blanca, and they're apparently twins, and one of them is dark and one of them is light. So again, at the bottom here, you can see the actors. One was obviously done in blackface, and this is a story where one of them was raped by a black figure, again, done in blackface, and just really villainizing dark colored skin in the Philippines. And next we have here MMK, which is like fictionalized, dramatization of true to life events of certain people. So they feature people. And the young man at the bottom here, he is Norman King. He's the first graduate of the Aita community from the University of the Philippines. So it's supposed to be like an exposure for Aitas in the Philippines, indigenous Filipinos, right, in the Philippines. But they decided to put an actor in an Afro wig and in blackface. So that's really weird. Okay, so other parts of the media that show us anti-blackness, we have these advertisements that show us like light-skinned Filipinas, just emphasizing the notion that white skin is beautiful, white skin makes you look rich, right? In this particular example, these are twins, and one of them was done in brown face again, and it's from a company called Skin White, and it's the messaging is white or brown or white or dark, you're still beautiful or something like that. It's just really problematic. And this one is saying that 3 in 5 Filipinos believe that people with fairer skin receive better treatment from others, and they're trying to cite it as a legitimate statistic to promote their whitening products. Like, since this is preferential treatment for there is preferential treatment for white skinned people, just use our whitening products, right? So the messaging in a lot of beauty um, um, advertisements in the Philippines is that if you're dark, if you're aging, if you're gaining weight, you have to fix it because it's a problem, right? So um, the beauty industry, I think everywhere, but in the Philippines, most especially because that's my exposure. Like, there's this big deal of capitalizing on people's collective insecurities to sell their products. So I just wanted to show you, this is my mom. She's a beauty queen. And then this is me. So my mom is thin. She has lighter skin, and she's conventionally beautiful, right? And I was growing up as this little chunky kid with um, curly hair and darker skin, right? So it was a little difficult to navigate my childhood um, because my mom didn't know really what it was like to grow up like me, to grow up with all of these features, right? So she didn't have that experience, and it's a little difficult to like navigate that growing up. So okay, here we go. So the next part is me deconstructing my work as a model, right? So I'm just going to show you some of the campaigns that I've been part of. First off, we have here a campaign for a Filipiniana brand. So it's a Filipiniana clothing brand. And they put on me light colored contacts and faux freckles to emulate features of somebody with lighter skin, because I can't have freckles because I'm a brown girl and I have dark eyes, right? But they still thought it proper to actually put these features on me as if the way I am was not enough. Second here was a commercial where I was casted as like a contrast to the mestiza celebrity here. So mestiza is a word that you may have heard before, but the definition is based from a colonial past where mestiza is a Filipino and Spanish mixed. Yeah. So they usually have lighter skin and they have European features, and that has been carried throughout our culture as, you know, a compliment. You're mestiza, you're white, you're beautiful, and all these things. So just for reference, if I keep saying that later. So yeah, there's this contrast here, and it's very apparent. And then on the right here, we have a group photo of a Filipiniana brand where the brown skinned girls, which is the lady at the back with the black outfit, and then me on this side, I feel like we were just put in the periphery as a frame for the whiter skinned European looking girls in the middle, right? We're actually all Filipinas, but some of them are like half white and half Filipina, and it's just an image, right? Where the brown skin girls are at the periphery, and our skin tones were edited to be lighter as well. So I am not this pale in the picture, as in the picture. And then there are other campaigns here, like this one for Benefit, where the order of the way we were shown here is just based on the shades, and there's really no problem with that, right? And then this one for Beauty Manila, where everybody is shown equally in just one straight line like this, right? So this is just an analysis that, you know, everything here is intentional. Everything was thought of, right? And here are some features. This one was from Cosmopolitan, and it's supposed to be a secret slimming swimsuit, right? And when I wore it, apparently it wasn't slimming enough. So they felt the need to tuck in my belly to make it like straight and slimming. And then they lifted my hips a little bit and made my butt a little bigger and all these things, right? So they were going for body positivity, but they still felt the need to tuck me in places, right? Versus, oh, sorry. Versus this feature here for Beauty Manila, where all my dimensions are transparent. They really put my measurements there, you know, and all of my scars and my discolorations were left unedited, which I appreciate. So it's just two sides of you know, publishing beauty positive messages in the Philippines. Right, so this is something that I just wanted to share, just to show you that everything here is actually deliberate, okay? So casting calls from my agents, right? So, okay, I'll just read this out to you. They're looking for a female morena, as in morena. Morena is brown, morena girl that looks like an island girl, but still a pretty morena. Don't send us anyone African looking. Okay, so that's another anti-blackness messaging here. Don't send African type girls. Second, female, late 20s to mid 30s, housewife or single as long as she knows household chores. Morena slash Pinay, upper C projection. Real but not chaka. So I'm just going to translate that. They're saying Morena and Pinay has upper C projection, which is a euphemism for poor looking, or just, you know, not well off. So that's a euphemism, upper C projection. And then there's this phrase here, real but not chaka, which is Tagalog for kinda real looking but not ugly. Okay? That's so weird. I know, I'm shocked too, Bianca, every time. So here we have Pinay or Mistiza. And the Pinay or Mistiza will act as Doña. So she's high class, she's well off, right? And then in the same casting call, there's Filipina, female Pinay or Mexican looking maid. Huh? It's really weird. So they're having brown girls play Mexican looking maid, you know, so they're just subscribing to stereotypes here. And then there's this other one looking for white or Asian, and they have to be successful looking. So that's another you know, stereotype that people are trying to subscribe to. And this is just to show you that these are casting calls. So they're very deliberate about the kind of people that they're looking for. They're very specific. They're looking for these types of people to portray really certain kinds of roles. So this is problematic because media is created in culture, right? So if from the very beginning these things are intentional, then of course the product is teaching everybody, all the eyeballs that are on there, to think these things, right? This is crazy. I know they're blatantly racist. Hi. Okay. So next, my deconstruction of my work as a makeup artist. So this is one of the things that I've worked on. I've worked on nails here. I didn't do the makeup for this certain project, but I did the nails. So you can see that they're not Filipina. This lovely lady on the left is Korean, and then the lady on the right is South African. So in my head, I was like, why do we need foreigner models for SM? So SM is like the biggest retailer in the Philippines. They have multiple branches in every city, just a really, really big brand, right? But they have these models here that are foreign. So I asked one of the people in the from SM. I asked like why do we have foreign models? And even the team that worked on this was foreign. It was just me and the hairstylist who were actually Filipinos, and they said, "Oh, that's to make the brand more aspirational." Aspirational meaning, you know, have something to aspire to, and we have to aspire to be white, to be light skinned and blue eyed and skinny and poreless, you know. So that's the kind of messaging that they really wanted to bring out. And there are millions and millions of eyeballs on these um, uh, models here on this messaging, right? So that's really problematic. Next is just like pictures from my work. I was going to talk about insecurities, working with celebrities and um, ordinary people, right? But what I've noticed is that when I do my makeup work, people always feel the need to apologize on my makeup chair, right? They apologize on all about all of these different things, acne, blemish skin, oily skin, dry skin, you know, all of these features and all of these things that they have going on with their bodies. They always feel the need to apologize for these things. And when I'm on somebody else's makeup chair as well, you know, it's just that somebody's in your face and you want to apologize for your insecurities before they can say anything. So, you know, that's the thing that's going on here. So, yeah. And so I made Pretty Positive. It's my blog, and it's for self-care for the body and spirit, because I feel like both of these things work together really to um, um, create that identity and self-love within ourselves. So this is me when I was younger, and I feel like this little girl, she knew something. She knew something that I wanted to be a model and I want to be out there, but it's because of the socialization and, you know, being out in school and the bullying and all of these things that made me believe somehow that it wasn't possible for me, right? But um, my advocacy is really about honoring yourself and about honoring your body, your spirit, your gifts, your needs, your strengths, your boundaries, your dreams, you know, just honoring everything about you that makes you you. I'm all about waking up to your own beauty and then see beauty everywhere. Okay, so this is a quote from Shamsi Supsup, who is a beauty queen, but she's also very intelligent. She was the board top notcher for the architect board exams in her year. So she said the standard of beauty is not definite, we define it, right? And I couldn't agree more. Um, and I think now is a better time than ever to redefine beauty for ourselves and for future generations of Filipinas and Filipinos. Thank you.
Oh, amazing. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. That I'm just reading through the comments, and like there's so much outrage and shock in the comments, which is very appropriate. And I remember like when the three of us, so when Erianne, Nikki, and I were just reviewing the slides together, I remember like Erianne, Nikki and I were also very shook by many of the things that we saw. And I think, you know, I think the outrage is definitely valid and very appropriate, but I think it's also, you know, very inspiring too that you're here and we're talking about advocating for ourselves despite all of these horrible, very, very blatantly negative things that we're told about ourselves and about our bodies all the time, and like that we are still here and we still believe that there's space for us and want to create that space. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And every time I hear or see Arian's presentation and slides, because we have gone through them like several times, a few times, I'm always shocked and I'm upset. And living in the Philippines also right now, it really definitely brings to my attention things that I have just like put as white noise in the background, and it becomes really more subliminal. And I've seen these ads actually in the wild, and
In the wild.
in the wild, and just to know what happens behind the scenes to get them there, and these shows also, it just really makes it clear how we've been fed these standards and these images and how it can really take a toll. And it kind of starts to make sense why we think a certain way, and then things don't suddenly become just like coincidental or like circumstantial, like, oh, it's just the way it is, which is, I saw in the comments someone was mentioning how like they don't know that it's wrong. And I think the attitude here a lot is just like, it's just the way things are, and there's no really questioning of it, or like an understanding that we can change that. For example, there are people like Erianne, or there are models and makeup artists who are capable and have a voice within the industry to change that, and we could also be part of that change. And yeah, this Erianne's presentation and stories always just like shock me, but also remind me of the importance of like questioning where these standards come from, and paying more attention to the things that we're consuming and the way that it affects our minds. So I remember in Ariane's story, obviously you're really immersed in this, from like television to commercials to film to ads, digital ads and campaigns. And Gelaine and I were wondering how you navigate that and how you deal with that coming home from like a long shoot day, and technically, or your client might not be the gentlest or kindest or like most accepting or inclusive, and how you deal with the mental toll it takes when you come home, and how you take care of yourself and your mental health, and remind yourself of like the little Erianne who was unapologetic and knew that she was beautiful and that the world should find her beautiful too. So that was what we were wondering.
Yeah. So for me, it's always having like my truth to be like part of my makeup kit. So it's something that I really pack with me when I go to my work, either as a model or as a makeup artist. And it's just like my compass, and it's just being really solid in my identity and my self esteem, my self-worth, and just really be solid with that. Just that regardless of what I encounter along the day, during the day, along the way, um, I am sure of who I am, and I know that whoever's opinions out there, they don't matter. All that matters is what I think about myself. Yeah. And as an advocate, and bringing this to my work, because that's my truth, right? I just feel the need sometimes to put it here and there when I'm working, and like I compliment people with their features and things like that, just to awaken that sense in them that they're really beautiful, and there's nothing that really needs to be changed about them. So in that sense, I really enjoy my work. I don't really go home really depleted or anything, just because I recognize um, the space, the position I have in like the space that I move around in, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what I do.
Thank you. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Gelaine, is there something that you wanna ask Erianne more about?
Yeah, like there's just so much. I'm just reading a lot of the comments, and like I think a lot of it can really relate to what you're sharing. Yeah, and like I think yes, sorry, just someone who is messaging, but if you have questions, please feel free to add them in, because we might not be able to get to all of them right now, but there will be time for questions from the community at the end, and we'll try to insert your questions throughout. But I think that actually related, perfect, Isabella, this is actually my next question, is just related to like how things are evolving, because I think a lot of us can definitely relate to things in our families, I think maybe not as blatant as some of the things that you've experienced, Ariane, in modeling, but I think that these are things that have been in our cultures and within our families for so long because it's so ingrained. And I think that right now we are seeing a shift, at least in terms of the kind of conversations that are happening with Black Lives Matter. There is truly a revolution, which is quite amazing. And I think, based on your experience, Ariane, and what you're seeing right now, like how, I guess the first part of that question is like, how has the Black Lives Matter movement kind of been manifesting itself in Philippines or being received in Philippines? So that's the first part. And then part two is like, how do you kind of imagine that changing your line of work in the beauty industry?
Right. So the Black Lives Matter movement came here at a really volatile political climate as well. So as all of that was going on at your side of the world, over here, there's really a lot of political unrest as well. So there have been a lot of conversations about, because a lot of people here, influencers and like just general like people in social media, they post about Black Lives news or like campaigns, or they posted little black square on Instagram, things like that, right? So there's been a lot of discussion about how you can't be a Black Lives Matter advocate without first advocating for our own people and the police brutality that's happening in our country as well. So, if you're supporting Black Lives Matter, you also have to be against like extrajudicial killings in the country, the drug war and all of these things. So there's been a conversation about like hypocrisy and just standing up for uh, trendy campaigns when it suits you because it's good for your image, la 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 la. But then in our own country, you're too afraid to speak out about the injustices that are going on here just because it's against the norm, or it's just really less widely accepted than being part of a movement like Black Lives Matter, where there is like global um, advocacy for that, right? So the way that I see it changing um, the industry here is, well, I'm optimistic about it, but okay, so first off, even before this, like there have been efforts to include dark-skinned girls, or girls that look like me in beauty campaigns and stuff like that, right? But I do think that they still have to be fine-tuned. I think it's very the discussion of representation and visibility in the Philippines is very new. So I think all these steps are steps in the right direction, but there's really a lot to be fine-tuned about it still. With regards to how Black Lives Matter in particular could be affecting like our beauty campaigns and stuff like that, I actually spoke with a friend who is half Black, and she also models for beauty brands and stuff like that. And she said, "Air, I'm really upset because the brands that I've modeled for don't seem to be speaking out against you know um, the mistreatment of Black people in America and here." So she's like, "I'm so upset that people use me for my Blackness, that brands use me for my Blackness, and now at the time where I'm vulnerable and I need most support from these brands that I've worked with in the past, like nobody's saying anything, they're silent." And it even took for her to message one of these brands to actually acknowledge it as a thing that's going on. It's been going on for weeks at the point where she messaged them. So she's like, none of this is real. None of this diversity thing, none of this inclusion thing, and using me for my skin tone is real. None of it is empowering. So it's really a lot of work still, I feel. There's definitely needs to be a lot more education and awareness on the issue, and I'm optimistic about that. I mean, for just the fact that these conversations are happening at all gives me a lot of hope about how it's gonna turn out here
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely going to be a lifelong process. And I think, there was a question earlier, which is such a good question that I think I would love us to dive into it afterward. But like someone was asking about healing and like, how do we heal? And I think part of that is also part of that process of healing is also, learning and unlearning a lot of the things that we've been taught. And I think that, even for me personally, like I've been on this journey and trying to educate myself as much as possible. And I've learned a lot over the last few years, but even over these last few weeks, there's so much that I learned that like this colonial mentality and that internalized racism is so real. And like, I'm uncovering things that even now, like I didn't realize were there despite like so many efforts over these years to learn. So I guess from that, like, what have you found the hardest or the most difficult for you to like either learn or to unlearn in terms of like your own understanding of beauty and yourself?
I guess for me, that's really the unlearning of my skin tone. As I've been taught that my skin tone is uh, second class to being white and light, right? Also my hair. So from a very young age, like as soon as I started school, I've been bullied for the way that I looked. I've been called plenty of different animals and um, what else? Animals and like creatures and stuff like that. So like that's something that's very I guess difficult to unlearn, especially if it's something that's been told to you from the very beginning, right? But I'm just glad that at home it's not like that. But yeah, going through life, I guess I was just exhausted. I was just tired of being like defined all these different ways that I don't agree on. I mean, like that honoring that inner child, where I had no limitations. I was just free to be whoever I wanted, right? And um, it's just I was exhausted and I wanted to go back to the way that that little girl thought about herself. And I guess that's just how I began unlearning all of these things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's just so much there. I think the unlearning will never end. And I think it's up to us, like you said, like in our future generations.
Yeah, definitely one thing that we can take away from your story, Ariane, is that like none of us are born with these biases in terms of like what's beautiful and worthy, right? So like seeing you and how happy you are, and I have so many pictures like that too. Like I didn't care if I had a round belly, I'd wear a crop top and like just strut for my first birthday, or like I didn't care about wearing a two-piece or whatever as a kid because it's innocent and it's really something that we have to keep unlearning. And one of the things actually that we ask our community that is here right now, and one of the things that we wanted to know was what was one of their favorite things about their body and why. And we were really touched and moved by a lot of these answers, and we wanted to share them with you. So yeah, here's the slide that Gelaine pulled up.
Yeah, there are so many of them. These are only just a few because there are actually a lot of responses and they were so good. So unfortunately, we could only fit a few on the slides. But yeah, some of your favorite things.
Oh, but if you want to add yours, or if you didn't have that opportunity, you can just put it in the chat also, so we can have like a little positive corner. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. I think it's important, especially because there's so many negative things that we hear all the time about our bodies. So I think especially now, like this is a good time to celebrate what we love about her. Yeah. So some of the things people shared, someone loves their hair. It's nice and shiny. My soft tan skin and my strong legs. And actually the response was even longer and it was really nice. I'd just like to read it. But two things that I was taught, so they love their soft, tense skin and strong legs, because there are two things that they were taught to be ashamed of, but I've grown to love because these two things hold so much power. My brown skin reminds me of where I come from. The strength in my legs have carried me through the many hardships of my life.
Yes.
To remind me that I'm here and present. That's so good.
Wow.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And there's so many more. So there's
Yeah. Yeah. My hands, because I use them to create and to interact with the world around me. Someone said my boobs. The Maria Clara in me definitely makes me shy to admit that, and to be honest, relate. My legs, because they are beautiful, powerful and strong. My morena skin, my Nutella-ness, yes, because it is my roots, my ancestors working the fields in Watsonville in the Philippines, and my Ilocano-ness.
yeah. Yes.
So shout out. I'm an Ilocana as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, there are so many beautiful responses that we got. So that was really lovely to see. Yeah, and then if you all are sharing and if you're comfortable sharing, please drop them in the chat as well. I'm seeing some really nice ones, and people are starting a book club in the chat. That's cool.
I see. It started, in case you missed it.
Yeah.
Bianca shared a really helpful resource about how a book that's been instrumental in her unlearning, and
cool.
Crystal also shared other books. That's why we're starting a book club, apparently,
Okay.
in the book club.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about that more.
Us.
I just literally from this.
Love to be part of that as well.
Thank you for sharing those those resources. Let's get into that later in the audience Q&A. Yeah.
Abby's telling me to catch up. I know. I just I was busy facilitating the slides, and you all organized things without me. Awesome. Yeah. So these are just some beautiful responses, and it was really lovely to just see some of those things.
Yeah, I'm seeing these.
Yeah. And I guess just question then for you, Erianne, or I think Nikki, you had a question.
Yeah. So with this conversation of finally understanding about the deliberateness of the things that we encounter every day that we might not even notice, and also just with the discussion in the chat about starting a book club and looking for references, resources to really decolonize our ideas of beauty. I was wondering, Erianne, do you have any advice for Filipinos who want to decolonize or change their approach to beauty? Is there an actionable first step they can take?
Yeah. So I've been asked this before, how do you get from a really self-esteem, low self-esteem to being body positive, right? And I do acknowledge that it's not easier. It's not as easy to get here from here, right? So one thing is to just be matter of fact about it. A lot of us have a lot of negative self-talk, and the first step is maybe to step from being negative to being neutral about it. Instead of saying, for example, oh, my belly is so big and it's bad, and I have all these scars and that's bad, and things like that, right? To okay, this is my body, this is my belly, these are my scars, this is my skin. Just acknowledge them in a matter of fact way, and then for me that actually just evolved into loving them, from acknowledging that they're there and all these things that they do for me, into loving myself. Yeah.
If I could add to that, because I was reading something yesterday on body neutrality, and there's a big movement for body positivity, but sometimes a lot of us can't get to that place yet, and it can be really there can be a lot of shame about not being positive and not being totally in love with your body and self all the time. So I'll link the article in the chat also. It's from Man Repeller, and they were talking about body neutrality, and some of you may be familiar with already, but it really is. But in case you aren't, it's just it's okay if you don't love, or even feel total adoration for your body, but body neutrality is about accepting your body and valuing it and just being kind to yourself. And to quote the article, it says, it feels great to love the way you look, but you don't need to you don't need to in order to value yourself.
Yeah.
And they were talking a lot about like the narration and the monologue you have in yourself, and like Erianne said, just changing the way you speak to yourself does a lot of already for me. What helped was like having a better viewpoint or outlook on like something like fitness is just being grateful for what I'm able to do in progress. Like there's a like influencer and fitness advocate here in the Philippines. She's called Erianne Salazar. She's in leadership, and yeah, but she shared a quote before. She was like, working out isn't just a punishment or for what you ate, or but it's more of like a celebration of what your body can do. And I think, as Erianne said, just a step up from acknowledging what that your body is. It is. You're able to celebrate just the things that you are able to do. Like someone said, here, I'm happy at my hands because I used to create and interact with the world around me. My strong legs because of where they've taken me. So I think that's a really big step to just be kinder to the way you speak to yourself.
Yeah. To just like take our focus away from how things look, and just value ourselves for the things that most people can't see, like for our strength, for our resilience, for our courage, for our kindness, just acknowledging all these beautiful things about us that people don't necessarily see, but we know about ourselves, and that's going to really help us create a healthier self-esteem.
Yeah, I think I love all these points, and I think there's a lot that comes with just trusting your voice and trusting that you are you are who you are meant to be in a way, and having trust in that. And like what Nikki was saying is like, you don't necessarily, it's not always tied, it doesn't have to be tied to our looks or to our appearances. And there's so much value in who we are inherently that we don't need to be perceived as beautiful in order to be valuable. And I think that's something that's really key for us to acknowledge. And I just, before we go into the pause and questions from the audience, I just want to kind of, tie things back to our advocacy around wear your heritage, because in a lot of ways, wear your heritage and this idea of like wearing something and fashion can be frivolous, but it can also be really deep, and it's also very personal, because it doesn't even need to be about wearing something that's beautiful. It just needs to be about wearing something that's meaningful to you, or having something that's meaningful to you. And I think when we talk about, I think someone had mentioned in a way like beauty as a form of resistance. And I think someone had mentioned that in the chat. And I think that, choosing to express ourselves and express ourselves outwardly in a way that's authentic to ourselves is one of the biggest and most important ways that we can resist and that we can practice activism. Because that when we live in a world that's telling us that people like us shouldn't be proud of who we are, to present yourself in a way that says you are like loud and proud and brown, like that is a form of resistance. And I think that's something that is really, really important. So yeah, that was a really lovely part of our conversation. I would like to just move things along a little bit so we can get into the questions from the audience and hear more from you all. And if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. But we are going to take a really quick little pause. It's 9:05, and just like a little quick pause just to gather some thoughts and refill our drinks and such. But before we do that, I think Nikki, you just want to tell you a little bit more about Kape and our partner. Yeah.
So we'd really like to give a special thank you to Kape Coffee for just joining us, but also giving us a little treat to share with you. So if you didn't know, Kape is a Canadian social enterprise promoting direct-to-farmer coffee from Philippine Indigenous women growers and roasted in small batches. It's founded by a husband and wife team of Filipino immigrants. Actually, Iona, I think, is with us right now. She said hello in the chat earlier, and we're happy to have them. So Kape aims to highlight the stories behind each cup. And if you go to their website, you'll see that they have the stories of the farmers and how they grow and what the coffee tastes like. And we think that's wonderful. And they honor women and families behind great coffee and share how we can make a difference with our purchases. And they work closely with a community of native coffee growers in Benguet, Cordillera, and Davao del Sur. Kape brings some of the most unique and flavorful coffees from the Philippine Highlands to Canada and beyond. They've invited us to go visit the coffee plantation with them the next time we go to the Philippines, so we're really excited for that. But really, yeah, so after actually our brief break, we actually have a surprise giveaway. They've given us the gift of gifting one of you and our audience tonight to some of the coffee so that you can taste a little piece at home. And yeah, been there, done that coffee pack. It's a pack of 3 coffee bags, perfect for gifts, perfect for travel. And but it's also available online at Cafe Coffee. Their website is open and they're doing our orders. So yeah, after our very brief break, we'll be announcing who gets to enjoy their coffee. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. So I think we'll just take a quick break for maybe just like 2 minutes. So we'll reconvene at like 9:09. Sorry, it's a weird time, but 9:09. So just like take a couple minutes to refill your drinks, your beer, your wine, your coffee, your tea, and we will meet back here. And in the meantime, if you have questions and have not dropped them yet, some people have been sending us questions, so continue to do that, and we will be back at 9:09. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I said 9:09, but it's actually 9:10, so 1 minute. Hopefully you're all back with your drinks refilled and ready, because we have some amazing questions. So Erianne, we hope you're ready, because they're really, really good. yeah, we're gonna do Q&A maybe for about like 15 minutes or so, and we're gonna see how many we can get through. Sound good? So for our first question, so I think it was, sorry, I'm trying, oh, actually, no, first part, sorry. The winner of the Kape giveaway is Christelle from New York City. So Christelle, congratulations. We will reach out to you after the Kwentuhan session to coordinate your Kape gift. And thank you again to our friends at Kape for contributing this gift. The first question that we do have is, so Erianne, can you talk about how beauty is tied to sexuality and erotic power? So to quote Audre Lorde, as in how is our beauty actually a divine container for Filipino women to express themselves and claim their pleasure? This is a question from Alexandra. Oh, sorry, Erianne, you're on mute. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes. So, claiming our beauty is one thing, right? And claiming our bodies as sensual female bodies is also another topic, and it's definitely one of the focuses of empowerment here as well. But in the Philippines, it's actually still in a very primitive phase. Recently, just in the last week, actually, there was this campaign against victim blaming. It's hashtag Iha ako, HIJA ako, which means I'm also a young woman, because there have been people in the media, the Tulfo brothers, who have been threatening rape to random ladies online, and one of them is actress and performer Frankie Pangilinan, and she's the daughter of one of our senators here. So it really put the discussion of bodies, female bodies, into the forefront just recently. Because in the Philippines, you know, it's still like you can't wear certain things because you have to keep yourself safe from predators and bad people. You know, like the burden of protecting yourself is still upon you. Like it's not a reasonable expectation from people around you to just be decent and just be like, hello, like really, I don't know, evolved. So in that sense, you know, like reclaiming our sensuality and sexuality, it's uh it's a conversation that's mostly had in academic settings. Like when we talk about it amongst peers, like students or professors and things like that. But I don't think it ever really has leaked out into like conversation among like the masses, right? There's still this notion that if you show your body, or if you accept your sexuality, or if you are a woman who expresses her enjoyment of sex or sensuality and all of these things, right? There's still a lot of slut shaming going on. There's still a lot of victim blaming going on. So yeah, in that sense, I guess there is some conversation about it, but it's still um, very contained in an academic setting, and elsewhere it's still getting out of that mentality of um, if women's bodies are shown, then they are for consumption for everyone, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To quote, just to reference what Ariane was talking about, the incidents recently, one of the Tulfo brothers actually said, like, you're inviting the beast.
Yeah.
Those were his words, and it really did spark a conversation. and it's just really upsetting. But yeah, I think reclaiming that part is just taking back the ownership and taking back like autonomy of your own body also.
Yeah.
There's also one question in the chat earlier from Amanda. How does one heal from racist, colorist, and classist beauty standards? But before that, sorry, if you have any more questions or would like us to follow up, or if we missed anything, feel free also to just follow up in the chat. But yeah, the other question is from Amanda. How does one heal from a racist, colorist, and classist beauty standards?
Yeah. So I think I could only speak for myself because the process is different for each individual, right? But for me, it's about um, acknowledging that what's this? Everything is intentional, and they were really meant to put you down, right? And just being aware of the fact that these are messages that they want to send out to you. So I guess it's advocating for yourself first and foremost, and recognizing that it is your choice if you want to adhere to these standards or not, right? And I know that it's very difficult. Like I can't even begin to comprehend like the pain that Black people are going through at this point in time. And it's all like a really personal process. But I do recommend like um, going back to yourself and beginning that journey of healing within yourself, because it's a systemic problem, right? It's very ingrained in our culture, in our governments, and all of these things are bigger than us. And the only way that we can begin to contribute to that is to um, acknowledge our place in the puzzle and acknowledge that we are actually as individuals we are big parts of this whole movement, but it does begin with the self in order to um, heal the system as well. So yeah, does that answer your question?
To add to that, I think it's really valuable, and something we wanted to ask earlier was I think it's really valuable to have and really tune into like brown voices around you and connect with the community. So for example, like Erianne has been really helpful to me, following her on Instagram and just seeing that face and seeing that voice tell stories of Filipino beauty has been really important. So Erianne or Gelaine, feel free to jump in if you have any like influencers you'd like to or boost, or if there were any accounts or voices that you'd like to recommend to people to follow, or just even, I guess another thing is connecting with people in your community and building those relationships so that you can have a support system and like a community when things get really hard to deal with on your own.
Yeah, I think something that was interesting actually when Nikki and I were first talking about, putting together this Kwentuhan, because we knew even before like Black Lives Matter really hit momentum and the protests began, we already knew we wanted to cover this topic. And we were actually looking for, Pinay people in this space who talk about like colorism and body positivity. And it was really hard actually to think of people. And like, there are several people in the Black community that I follow, but I realized that was actually a learning experience for me to realize like, I actually don't know many people who are in the Filipino community doing this work. And there are people out there, but I just realized that I had never really looked, or that I just wasn't surrounding myself with those voices from our community. So that was like an interesting realization actually. And then Nikki told me about you, Erianne, and I'm very thankful.
Thankful.
Yeah.
Does from the chat recommended try Filipina, so we'll look into that.
Yeah.
Filipina is a beauty brand, right?
Yeah. Actually, this would be a really good blog post for us to do for Cambio. So that, I guess, just to plug our blog, like stay tuned in our blog, because I think this is something that we should definitely do. But please, feel free to continue to share on the chat if you can think of some accounts that that people here should check out. But I just want to move on. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Yeah, just to add to that also, the books definitely, and the accounts that if you're sharing, we'll make sure to also include them in the blog so that you also have resources to look back on.
For sure. Yes. Just to move on to the next question, because I think it's something that's really relevant to all of us, but especially right now is just like dealing with our families, calling out or calling in with families. So there are a few questions that we got related to this, and I'm just for the sake of time, I'm going to combine them. So Liza, I think it's Liza or Lisa, was just asking, like, how do you educate family members who have these beauty standards so deeply ingrained? And, what is your approach to dealing with that negativity in your families?
Yeah. It's actually a really good question, because I am like the the eldest among my cousins, and I'm one of the older girls in my family with my cousins and stuff. So there are younger girls in my family who are also dark skinned like me or curly like me, right? And I always make it a point um, to acknowledge that about them and to tell them that they're beautiful, so that they hear it from uh, someone else, because I know when I was growing up, I didn't really hear any of that. So it's just to like empower them to like start believing about that in themselves. And um, on educating like older people, it's definitely much harder, because they already have like these ingrained ideas about color and beauty and all of these things in their heads, growing up, right, and going through life. So I just take every opportunity that I can, to educate them. Then, like, for example, if we're talking about it, then I always make sure to speak out about it, even if they're older titas and titos, which it can be difficult, um, especially when they're like antagonistic about it. They're like, oh, we didn't ask you, or something like that, right? So it's just about taking that step to talk about it when the opportunity arises, and if it's safe for you to do so, or if it's possible for you, then you can start the conversation um, on your own, and just really be open about it and acknowledge your power as somebody who has been educated about the topic, right? And acknowledge that power and that responsibility to talk about it. And most times that gives me the strength to open up conversations like that, because I know that it's bigger than me, and it's bigger than this one moment in time where they're all probably gonna hate me for a while. So I think that's one thing. Actually, I saw somebody in the comments earlier saying that her first action step is to share this recording with her family, and I feel like, yeah, that's a really good thing to do, to take that step to have your family listen to other brown voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something that's really helped me getting through and dealing with everything, especially with family and even with some friends that you love, but you can love people and have very complicated feelings about them.
Oh, for sure.
And and I think something that my sister actually said to me, because she's a teacher, and she told me, like, your job right now is not to convince people. Like, your job is to plant seeds, that those seeds will become ideas, and you need to water those ideas consistently, which means calling out
Yeah.
injustice, calling out anti-blackness, calling out these little things, these little microaggressions, these little comments that titos and titas make, and you know, doing your part to when you feel safe, you know, call them in and correct them, and you know, just be consistent about that. And it's not necessarily about changing their opinions overnight, because that won't happen, but it's about planting those seeds and then just watering them on a consistent basis. And I think that since she said that to me, that's really helped me a lot, because I think it's a lot of pressure that we can put on ourselves to feel like we need to change the people in our lives, and like we need to do our part and do what we can. But it's also acknowledging that, you know, we are one person, and we need to give ourselves grace and be kind to ourselves as well. So I think I guess like we are close to 9:30, so I'm just going to ask if we're okay with just one more follow-up question to that then. What someone was asking, I think it was Mackie was asking about, you know, how you respond in these very public instances in families where they will say things about your weight or about your appearance in very, very public settings, like in front of everyone else. You know, is there a way to respond to that? How do you generally approach that, Erianne?
Yeah, so that's happened to me a lot recently because I'm like the heaviest I've ever been. So then I have these comments about, oh, you tumaba ka or whatever, you got bigger, la la la, right? From family members. And for me, it's about acknowledging that they come from a different time, really, where all of these things are maybe acceptable to them, and just come from a place of compassion, I guess, because not everybody has had the opportunity to actually be educated about these things. And you know, it doesn't serve anyone, in my opinion, to be snappy about it. And you know, if you have sometimes, especially when we're talking about older people, like they have this attitude of uh, putting us down or silencing us, especially if we don't approach the situation with respect, right? So that might discourage them from listening to us in the future. So I just say thank you. Because I'll just take everything as a compliment from now on. Like that's how I just deal with it. Because you know, commenting about other people's bodies is a no-no. Like it's none of your business about what has changed about them or anything. And some of them feel like it's the best thing to say to you as a greeting, right? It's weird. But at the same time, we're also in a place of power and empowerment at this stage. And we decide how we respond to that. And I believe that if you respond to it with kindness or nonchalance at the very least, like they will be more open to, or at least less resistant to um, differing ideas, you know, in talking about it.
If I could add something briefly to that. Because in my family, the way they taught me that they expressed love was through joking. And sometimes when I was younger, I wasn't used to that because I grew up somewhere else. And when I came back to the Philippines, I wasn't aware, or it was really culture shock when they'd make fun of my parents or myself, and it got really painful. So when I asked, they used to say, "Oh, that's just their way of expressing their love," and it's something that I had to unlearn. And I think to point that out, that's just sometimes that's the way they understand how to express themselves, and that it's not, they don't know that it's unacceptable. And like I mentioned earlier, some of them just are used to the way things are. And I think it's important, if you're in the place mentally to confront that you can. So for me, what I used to do later on, because I didn't realize that that wasn't acceptable until recently, is that, and thankfully my family is a bit more accepting now, is that I gently tell the person if it's hurtful. Not necessarily in front of everyone, but I have now started to confront when something's hurtful, and I tell them, it's like, that's not very nice. That's kind of demeaning. That's kind of upsetting, and that's kind of hurtful. Just acknowledging that you may think it's a joke, but it's not. Just making them aware, and I think that starts a conversation. And they might think you're sensitive, but then I think that's also just reclaiming. Also, I mean, they will tell you that, oh, you're so sensitive, naman, or something. That's usually the response. It's just a joke. But then I think it's also like Erianne said, your power to take back that conversation. Just say, no, that was really hurtful, and then even talking to them more. And me, another thing I do is I meet them, and the way that Erianne just says thank you, I meet them with enthusiasm. Oh, I'm trying this new thing with my hair. Do you like it? Or like, oh, it's really made me feel prettier, and it's made my hair healthier, and I feel healthier. And just bring the conversation back to like how it feels empowering to you. It might change their mind. From my experience, that's how I've been dealing with conversations like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much, and I feel we could definitely just keep talking about this for hours. This could be a whole day. It could be a retreat. Actually be lovely. But yeah, I just, I think there's just so much for us to really discuss here, and like tonight is really just the beginning. And yeah, there's so much, and I think what's helpful here is that we are all here together, and that we're all learning together, and like that none of us are really alone, and there's a community for all of us. And it's like, it's here tonight. We have a book club already.
Yes.
And so, I think there's something to be said about that. And so, just to end that off, we just want to say thank you all. Maraming salamat for being here with us, and taking this time to unpack and to converse and to learn and unlearn. And we hope that you will keep in touch. So please do connect with us on Instagram. We've got our Instagram at Cambio_co. Jerome's added some of the links on our website. We also have our sister company called Cinta & Co., which is a Filipino wedding business for anyone that's planning a wedding. Yeah, because there's still weddings happening even in the middle of, they still love to celebrate even in the middle of a pandemic. And so please do check us out. And of course, connect with Erianne. So she's at Erianne Salazar on Instagram. And you can also head to her blog at I'mPrettyPositive.com. So we'll be releasing the recording for this session in the next few days. And we hope you do share with your family and your friends and get a conversation going. So thank you all for being here, and yeah, take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.